Okay, yeah, I think I'm live. Um, the sound, yeah, okay. Yeah, I can hear myself. So, this is the first podcast I'm going to do, the Kundalini King podcast. And I'm just going to jump right in. We're currently in lockdown in Ireland during the COVID-19 saga. So, no better time than to get stuck into this absolutely, I suppose there's no other word for absolutely shockingly weird subject matter and discussion. Okay, rather than go through the whole process of introducing myself and telling you my backstory, it would probably be the most sensible thing to do right now, but I'm not going to do it just because I don't feel like it. And don't worry, we'll get to that. We can get to all that. But this basically, I want to address an idea I've had lately, or something that has kind of came my way lately. So basically, you can probably tell by the name, I'm gonna talk about Kundalini a lot here. Now I'm not talking about Kundalini yoga, because Kundalini yoga is not Kundalini. It's people trying to raise their Kundalini, which is fine if that's what you want to do. Cool, but it's not the same thing. Most people who do Kundalini yoga will probably never have experience with Kundalini in their whole life. And some people who never do Kundalini yoga will have quite vast experience with the Kundalini. Okay, so anyone who's watching this who doesn't know what Kundalini is, I doubt very much anyone who doesn't know what Kundalini is going to watch this, but it's kind of like, so it's referenced in many cultures. You're talking about the Taoist culture, or Taoist, it's not a religion, Taoism, the Tao Te Ching. It's kind of like I suppose it is a cultural way, ideal for living or guide for life. They call it the spirit in the valley. I think Freemasons call it spirit fire. It's called lover's curl as well. Um, there's another name for it. Buddhists call it enlightenment. Buddha has a pretty sketchy explanation for it. The Hindus have a great explanation for it. They call it Kundalini. And there is another name, and I can't think of it right now. But, oh, yeah, the Christians call it the Holy Spirit. There isn't a very good explanation for it, unless there was, and it was completely destroyed or taken out of their script. Who knows? It could be. Right. So this is going to be in reference to another podcast I was watching called Uber Boyos. Now I just stumbled across this podcast. There's an Irish guy called Stefan on it, and then there's an English guy called James. And they're kind of doing Jung readings and Nietzsche readings, lectures, kind of giving their thoughts and expanding on it and extrapolating, yada yada yada. I thought it was great. I really liked it. And I continued to watch it. I didn't know what to make of them at first. I continued to watch it. Well, they were talking about some spooky, esoteric stuff, as Jung would and Nietzsche. They were throwing in a little bit of the occult there as well, which Kundalini was mentioned. I think Stefan talked about it. His description of it was very poor, but I mean, most people don't really know what it is. They just don't know what it is. Unless you have it, experienced it, an awakening, you have not got a ball's clue what it is. And like from the very moment you get that awakening, then you start to learn. So it could take you a year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years to understand what you're dealing with. You could also fight it. Most people, they have this experience and they reject it, they fight it. So, for example, what would it be like? Probably would be like fighting puberty. Could you ever imagine fighting puberty? Or like fighting, like a waking up, fighting waking up. You don't want to wake up, like you've been asleep all day or all night, and you're like, oh, I don't want to wake up, I'm fighting this. But it's pretty futile. And if you ever tried doing that, if you didn't accept it, you would probably have a very hard time. You would probably have a very difficult time. I suppose it's like fighting nature. So maybe some people have an experience with it. This might sound controversial, but this is just, I'm just using this as comparison, a parallel. I suppose gender change. I can imagine it would be as difficult. Um, Probably not a good comparison though, because like I probably shouldn't say this, but it's not a good comparison because there's masculine and feminine and everything, as we know. But it would be like fighting a force of nature. Not a good idea because you're probably not going to come out of it unscathed, and nature will probably win in the end. You're probably, I suppose it would be like fighting death, not accepting it. Yeah, best of luck with that if you ever, if you ever, if you ever decide that you're not going to die. Okay, so this guy is called James P. Dowling. Why am I talking about these guys on my first ever podcast? I thought it would be a good introduction, rather than, I'm kind of tired of talking about Kundalini Hinduism. I'm burned out, and I'll talk about it a lot, but I don't want to go through this whole introduction and tell my story. So while I was listening to this podcast, these guys spoke about it, and then they kind of departed from one another, so they no longer podcast together, which was kind of a shame because I think that their energies were quite yin and yang, and I think that they had kind of opposing energies, which there was kind of a bit of order and chaos going on, I found, and I thought they complemented each other well, but I can see why they may have parted ways. So James, this guy James P. Dowling, he talked about some experiences he was having. Now, the first one to catch my attention, and I'm going to go through 4 things he mentioned, which there's 4 things that he mentioned that have warranted me making this podcast. One, when he was doing the Ion lectures with Uber Boyles, he mentioned he would dream every night of this witch putting her arm out to come and take him. So that was immediately, I kind of took note of that and went, well, I think I know what that is. I've had that experience, and I'm pretty sure I know what that is. And I'm pretty sure he doesn't know what it is. And doesn't, maybe if he watches this and I've mentioned it, it'll click with him. That was a foretelling of what was to come for him. That was a foreshadowing. Nice little shadow reference there. That was foreshadowing of what was to come for him. And I don't mean this in a very like mystical way, because nobody would have known, but I didn't know what was to come for him, but I knew there was something going on. I did say in my own head that if these 2 guys keep talking this way and exploring these things the way they're exploring it, they're going, either one or both of them is going to have a mystical experience, because they're so open. They were incredibly open. They weren't holding on. And I'll get into that more. Like, as in, they talk about Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson holds on to, he's holding on to the edge, firmly. Actually, he's not. He's kind of sitting on the edge and letting his legs dangle over into the Jungian kind of the more out there mystical Jung stuff. He doesn't go too deep with Jung, so he kind of he's paddling. Whereas at times with James and Stefan, I feel they're wading in. they're not paddling, they're wading in. So I knew, if you wade into these waters of these, these deeply deeply powerful ideas, deeply um, kind of subconscious, shadowy ideas. I don't know how crazy ideas. You're going to hit something, or you're going to come out of the water, and it's going to be still on you. You're going to pick up something. So he talked about this witch. So he'd have a dream, and this witch would come at night. He'd get sleep paralysis, and the witch would come out and grab him and bring him somewhere. I wonder where he was going. So I've had that experience too. The other one was, so he talked about, so he had this experience where he was working really hard, he was drinking a lot, he was trying to be the best he could be, and he was forcing it. He was working like 14 hours a day in 3 different jobs, and trying to be to make a success of himself. And he's quite a young man, really admirable. And I've done that before myself, and it does end up with some drink, trying to quench whatever kind of you're doing to your energy. You're forcing your energy. It's not good, and it will send you in a direction where you need to kind of, you feel you'll reach for some kind of sedative, or you'll reach for some kind of something to kind of tranquilize that energy. And that's what he was doing. So he mentioned this. He also mentioned something very, very, very interesting, where he overworked, he forced himself, he was drinking, his relationship was going to really bad place. His girlfriend was becoming unhappy, his mom was telling him, look, you're not yourself, blah 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 blah. You get the idea. And then he went to the doctor, and he said, my head feels like it's lifting off me. And that's what really caught my attention. He said, my head feels like it's being decapitated and it's lifting off me. There's something wrong. So when I heard that, my ears just pricked up, because I know that. I know what that is, and there's nothing wrong with him. There's something coming. I think there's something coming for him, but there's nothing wrong with that. So hopefully, a general practitioner is probably the wrong person to go to for when that happens. He's fine now, so it doesn't matter. He went, and that's all good. But he also talked about this dream of decapitation. Abraham Lincoln was being decapitated, which also made my ears prick up again. I was like, okay, so in the dream world, you've been taken by this witch. We'll call it the astral realm, the astral plane, some people like to call it. So this astral woman is taking you, and then somebody is showing you a father figure, a forefather, Abraham Lincoln, being decapitated. And I don't know, I can't remember, was he decapitated as well? But I can guarantee you that James himself was decapitated in this. Now, the witch taking him, it can be, when it was happening to me, I thought it was like coming, taking my energy, and I got quite angry with it. And I meditated, and I asked my subconscious to sort this out, because I don't like sleep paralysis. I don't like being taken without my permission. I want it to stop. I want to be asked. So this is what I did. And that's what happened. And it did stop. And I remember one night I caught the moment. I woke up when this entity, this witch, came to take me. And I said, what are you doing? Stop. And when I woke up, the imprint of her face was in my mind's eye. When I closed my eyes, I could see the imprint of her face. And then she turned into like an animal, a deer or something. But anyway, in Kundalini, there is a concept. Now, by the way, just before I go through this, I think that James was experiencing dark night of the soul. It's quite young for him to experience that. He talked about an experience where his friend stole his girlfriend. I think ego break, ego death. He was probably fighting ego death by working really hard. But that's coming. He talked about destiny as well. So I think he's got himself back together, but he's probably rebuilding his ego now, which is why he parted ways with Stefan. I don't know. But I'd say he was experiencing that. So he talked about, he said ego. Yeah, he also said that Uber Jimmy had to die. His old Uber boyo had to die. And that's like, to me, symbolized, okay, you're killing an old self here. This all ties in, an ego death. So Kundalini will cut things out of your life. It will cut people, situations that it doesn't want you engaging in. So there's this goddess in Kundalini Shakti, okay? And she's the goddess, and Shiva in Hinduism is the god. And they say when your Kundalini activates, that's Kundalini Shakti. Now, an incarnation of Kundalini Shakti is Kali. And there's a picture of Kali. You can source this online. I don't know how to do that. Here, I might get her up, actually. There's a picture of Kali. And what Kali does, she likes to cut people's heads off. So she's a Hindu goddess. And when she decapitates the head, that's her decapitating the ego. That's what that represents. So you can see it here. Ooh, probably too bright. Here's Kali. Okay. There she is with a head in her hand. And you can see the head, the eyes are open and the eyes are looking up. And there's the Hindu goddess. That's Kali. So that was the first thing that tied in for me. It took me a long time to realize that. Some fierce witch in your dream, because you see how she looks. She looks very fierce. That could be the archetype or the Hindu archetype of Kali, who decapitates the ego. And when she does that, that could be an initiation process of awakening the Kundalini. How do I know about this? Mine is awakened, fully activated, like the whole way up. So, and I never did Kundalini yoga, anything like that. I'll get into all my own story after this. I don't know why I'm starting it like this, but I am starting it like this with reference to someone else, because I think it's interesting that I can spot this in someone else. Okay, so lone wolfism, isolation. He talked about being eccentric, that he was kind of a bit of a lone wolf. All ties in with Kundalini. There's a stage you go through, well known, where you're cocooning. Now, I didn't know this. I never really fit in too well. So you have to confront your traumas to unblock them. Big fan of Western psychology. That's what I experienced. I've done a lot of psychotherapy, and it just unblocked a lot of traumas I experienced as a child. So yeah, the witch in the astral realm may not be the female you think it is, James. It may be Kali beheading you, and that's a good thing. It's a very good sign. Okay, so if everything I've mentioned so far isn't obvious enough, you have a dream of John Cleese it's John Cleese, not Abraham Lincoln, sorry. John Cleese being decapitated. Maybe you look up to him, so you felt being decapitation, whatever. I don't know what I was saying there. I made notes on my phone, okay? The Knight of the Holy Grail being decapitated. Oh, right, okay, yeah, so that would be Cleese, because Cleese is the Knight of the Holy Grail. Do you see yourself as a knight? Dun, dun, dun. Do you see yourself as a knight? Kali decapitates the ego. She cuts the ego head off so that you can merge with the spirit. Now, you boys, Uber boys, you were talking some spooky stuff. So I'm not one bit surprised that you're having these experiences. So you may have felt, wow, I'm weird. This is James. James may have felt he's weird. I'm not right. There's something wrong with me. So, like the Kundalini will punish you in a sense for that, because you're showing fear. It won't work out well for you. So don't fear anything. If you want to go into, like, I don't know, fire snake, just do it. Follow your instincts. Don't think I'm crazy, I'm not normal. There's no such thing as normal. People are doing weird shit all the time. Very weird stuff. And they just hide it. Um, so you can't drink it away. You must follow your gut feeling. You can't control it. You have to let go of the wheel. You cannot control this. Okay? Can't force it. You can't outwork it. You can't outrun it. It's like the shadow. It's just a lot more powerful. If it's coming, it's coming. So just don't be worried if it does. It's all cool. Probably the best thing that will ever happen to you. So it's a trial by fire. You go through it, and as the Zen Buddhists would say, let go or be dragged. So you were being dragged until you accepted it. By the way, you got dragged around a bit there. Okay, so the collective conscious is real to you because of the decapitation dream. You need to look into Kali, Shakti, Salome. Okay, the next part now is going to blow your mind. So Salome, I know you're into Christianity. John the Baptist, the dance of Salome. I've already mentioned Kali and Shakti as incarnations or Hindu goddesses. So Salome, there's a story now I'm going to tell you. You might think this is rubbish, but I don't have the story here, do I? Okay, I know this story off by heart. So, there's a lot here. Jesus, I made a lot of notes. I go on to Gawain the Night, by the way. Okay, so the story of Salome is, so basically she does, for Herod, she does this belly dance. By the way, belly dancing activates your key energy. All right. Muay Thai fighting, which I've trained in, that activates your key centers, your key energy, and Tai Chi. So this dance that Salome does for Herod, he becomes unbelievably turned on by Salome, who's his stepsister. And he said, I'll give you anything, Oh, crap. And she asked for John the Baptist's head on a platter. So he didn't want to do it because he liked John the Baptist, but he actually did. You know the story. You can see a picture in Renaissance art with John the Baptist's head is cut off and the halo is around it. So a lot of times the halo represents the crown chakra awakening. The halo isn't just a Christian thing. The crown awakening. So the Buddhists call it the thousand petaled lotus. Buddha does. So basically, this beheading of John the Baptist is said to symbolize a Kundalini awakening. So Shakti is the Hindu goddess that does a dance for Shiva, and this is trying to awaken him. So the story of Salome is supposed to be another incarnation of Kali that I mentioned in I mentioned Kali already as a witch, and she decapitates. Salome gets Herod to decapitate John the Baptist. So it's just like, you'll have to look into that yourself because it gets very deep. But that's another thing that crossed my mind. Okay, something stored in your DNA, right? I don't want to get into that too much. Okay, right. After I made all these notes, I watched Gawain and the Green Knight. I've never seen Gawain and the Green Knight before. It's not very well known, and an Irishman would never watch something like that, to be honest with you. But I did. So, and in it's decapitation. He's being decapitated, and it's just a fear test, right? So your decapitation is a fear test. It's just testing you out, seeing if you're afraid. The same as Gawain. That's what Kali will do. It's all about making you surrender. Okay, surrender to a higher self. So the collective consciousness is on fire with all this stuff. Everything I've just linked here. Now you might go, look, this guy's insane. I don't see the connection. But if we're talking about Jung and the collective conscious, you have to see dots joining up here. So with this stuff, I would suggest you stop thinking, follow your feeling, your intuition, Um, also known as the crown, also known as gut feeling, also known as the third eye. You can call it whatever you want. There's a lot of bullshit talked about the third eye online, whatever. So it can't be explained with logos. It becomes like, if you try and connection to the spirit, if you try to explain it, it becomes this kind of shamanistic tongue speak, like just astrological babbles. So it's very hard for this stuff. Like, it's like having a chat with someone on psychedelics. It's like someone on psychedelics having a chat with a structural engineer, trying to explain what the Kundalini is to someone who's never had it. It really is. So it's very hard for me to do this, but I'm going to try. And if it doesn't make any sense, then whatever. I don't care. Uh, it doesn't. It is what it is. Um, Right. This stuff scares academics, and it's catnip for bullshitters, charlatans, wolves in sheep's clothing, the spiritual types who are consistently trying to sell you something and tell you something is wrong with you so you can buy their wisdom. So, like, I'm not one of these mystical spiritual types telling you I'm offering you some sage wisdom. I just have experience. You have all of this too. You're incredibly intellectual and hardworking. So there's nothing here that I can offer you. I'm not. In other words, this isn't me trying to like sell you anything. So there's a real issue with this stuff is how you weed out frauds. So I'm not really attached to any religion, any faith, any one thing, any one ideology, any one idea, because I feel you're immediately compromised when you do that. Um, so anyway, that's just me. Another classic Kundalini symptom is that you change the course of your life. You stopped your PhD. That's a classic Kundalini style move. It won't let you down a path that it's not going to lead you to awakening. It won't. You have to go. If it means that you have to go down a path that's like a miserable, tough slog where you crawl down it, it'll send you down it. I've been there, so I'm not making fun of it. I know what it's like. So, um, but just stay in your path. The more you try and fight it, the more you try and stay on a different path than your intuition wants you, the more miserable you're going to be. We're not machines. We cannot force that. Like you said about Napoleon before, you talked about all these people, like there's Kierkegaard. I think it's Kierkegaard or is it Schopenhauer who said they felt like they were on strings at the end of their life. They're like, what? I felt like there's a pattern here. Lots of people say it. They feel like they've been on strings. Did Jung say it? I'm not sure. So you might think you're making your decisions. You maybe even think other people influence your decisions. Not in the end. I have no proof of this, but you are on strings, just like Napoleon, and you are going where you're being sent. And if you don't go, you're going to get dragged there. From what I can see, while there's free will, there's like, there's like, it's like having a character in a game, or a role player game. You can change all the clothes, and you can you can change all the weapons, and you can change your occupation, and you can change like whatever. But there's only one way that game's going, like a simulation. So you didn't decapitate yourself. You will see that in time. Your drinking was probably trying to sedate this forced energy. You were creating this. You were fighting yourself. You were fighting yourself, trying to control, trying to keep everything going. You weren't wu wei, as the Taoists call it. You weren't following the flow of the river. You weren't reading the Tao Te Ching. You weren't going, okay, I gotta flow this way. Yeah, I done it too. I drank. I need to relax. I didn't. I was fighting all these feelings. I was trying to force success and force a relationship and force. It all went anywhere. It all. So I didn't. When I stopped drinking, then I confronted all my issues and figured myself out. And then the Kundalini energy is unblocked, and it's allowed to flow. You don't have to do yoga at all. You can do Western psychology. Carl Jung could, any good psychologist. Well, you know, I do a number of things. I was doing Muay Thai as well, which activates your. It's just as good as any yoga to activate your flow. And I was doing a lot of visualization, meditation, but we won't go into it. You are being decapitated. You aren't doing it. The ego, you're being separated from your feelings. But really, Kali is putting you back in touch. She's cutting off the head that thinks. So Kali's cutting off the thinking head. You must feel now. You're going to feel your way through life. You're not going to think your way through life anymore. So your body's left to feel. So stop crucifying yourself. That was the reaction you had when your best mate stole your woman. It made you feel worthless. You began to crucify your ego. Now you're developing a healthy ego. It's okay to relax, be happy, accept yourself for who you are. Interesting use of language. I don't know why I made that note. Maybe you need to crucify yourself for a while, suffer for a while, give it time. You will see the strings, you'll see the path. I do think you can intellectualize more effectively than I can. I'm not an academic. I didn't do a PhD or master's in any of this stuff. Intellectualism does not get you very far, though, without feeling. Wisdom or knowledge that is felt often cannot have words. Poetry and music can come close. Interesting take on Nietzsche. He still has an incredible amount of wisdom. I really enjoy him. James was saying he's like, Nietzsche deifies suffering and he lives in Christ's shadow and he doesn't want anything to do with him. Yeah, maybe he did live in Christ's shadow. He lives in a lot of, he probably lives in Lao Tzu's shadow too, and Confucius' shadow, and I don't know, he probably had a go at all of them. But he did sacrifice himself in a similar way to Christ. It's not as dramatic a story, but I think Nietzsche is very admirable, and there's a lot of wisdom. He sacrificed. On a note, be careful. You said to make sure everything you say is correct and up to date. Be careful with that kind of stuff. Everything you say is perfect. That doesn't exist. It's important to talk shit sometimes, which is why I mentioned the Uber boy as being yin and yang energy. As Joyce says, James Joyce, mistakes are the portals of discovery. You can slowly begin to crucify yourself again if you don't let yourself make mistakes. You'll start hammering nails into your hands again very quickly if you pulverize yourself for mistakes. So just accept your mistakes and move on. I don't know why I'm saying all this to you, man. Like, but I'm older. I'm like a lot older than you, so maybe I can help. So Mary is the guide of Gawain. Back to Gawain. Kundalini is a divine feminine energy. So like I wasn't one bit surprised to see Mary there as a guide, the feminine guide, the feminine energy. Divine feminine. You mentioned divine energy somewhere in that video, actually. Can't recall, but I picked up on it. So Mary appears in the Vesica Pisces, the merging of the worlds. When you see Mary, she's got this shape around her all the time. Look it up. Pictures of Mary with this shape around her, and she's in the middle. And that's the Vesica Pisces, two circles intersecting. And when they intersect, that's the merging of the worlds. Okay. The gate between the worlds, she's also an incarnation of Shakti. Interesting that she's the guide of Gawain. So Peterson, Jordan Peterson, he denies God, so he fails the ultimate test. He clings to intellectualism, to reason, to logic, to his status. Like, they'll crucify Peterson if he says he believes in God. So he doesn't. They'll destroy him. But if that was Jesus, he would accept being destroyed. So Peterson doesn't go fully. He doesn't dive fully in. He's paddling his feet, but and I love him. I really do. He's a legend, but I suppose he's too much to lose, and he's a family, and he's done enough. But the ultimate test, you can see when someone asks him, is there a God? Do you believe in God? He kind of goes, that's a personal question. It's a personal question. And he kind of hunches down, and his body language is like, or he'll get angry. He'll be like, why are you asking me that? It's like Gollum. You've touched a nerve. What would happen if you just said, yeah, I believe in God? Maybe he will. Yeah. So let's see. Did you crucify yourself before others had the chance to crucify you? Do you want to be perfect so you couldn't be hurt again? Because others will crucify you. The ones closest to you will. You mentioned destiny more than once. You mentioned destiny a lot. That's fake talk. That's that's Tao talk, man. Okay, listen to the first. I listened to the first 5 minutes of Steve the Shadow video, and I like him a lot. He immediately nails it. He's got great balance. He's got Taoist balance. This is one thing that Kundalini's taught me. Balance is always balance is always achieved. It doesn't matter an equal balance will come into your life if you pay attention to it. It always happens. The balance always, it's like fucking Star Wars. The balance will always come back to the Force. So just keep an eye on that. So everything will be okay. Yeah, interesting. If you try to be too good, Steve said, you will create evil to balance it out. I was struggling with that one because Nietzsche would say some things go beyond good and evil. And also, if you create too much evil, does good come along to balance it out? Maybe. I don't know. I thought that was very interesting. Anyway, that is me. That's everything I've wanted to talk about for James P. Dowling and his experience of late. I have my own channel being set up. It's called Kundalini King. I'm also a songwriter called Outsider, signed to, it doesn't matter anyway. It doesn't matter that side of me, but I want to get into this because I had an experience last year. Kundalini awakened, didn't know what the hell it was. Just a normal dude, like spirituality, like working out, like Muay Thai, like music, like writing songs, like working, like women, all the usual stuff. And that happened to me. So I think that it's my duty to talk about it in a balanced way. I don't feel like I'm going to be, a real mystical spiritual head. So hopefully I can. What I'd love to do. What I'd love to do is reconcile Western psychology and Eastern philosophy. Reconcile some science and mysticism. And I think they're reconciling slowly but surely. You know, thousands of years ago, the Hindus said there's many dimensions. Now science is saying there's many dimensions. There's 10 of them, and we think we're interacting with them. And the Hindus said it years ago. Look, there's other dimensions. We're interacting with them. Buddhists said 2,000 years ago the self is an illusion, and the Hindus said it too. And now science goes, yeah, that's pretty on the ball. The self is an illusion. So I'd love to bring. I think Western psychology is really important. Don't think it. I think it's bad. I think it's bad, for the want of a better word. I think it's like counterproductive that Western psychology and Eastern mysticism don't see eye to eye. It's like Western psychology will sort out all your problems, but if you have a spiritual awakening then and you really like feel enlightened, they'll medicate you. Eastern mysticism, it doesn't have enough shadow work. They don't understand the things that Western psychology understands. Maybe Taoism, but it's just not as effective. So these are the things I'd like to bring together to maybe help some people. That's what all this is about, helping people, because I know what's going to happen to me for this. When I say my Kundalini's awakened, the spiritual people, they think you're a liar because they're all trying to awaken their Kundalini, the Kundalini yogas, so they don't believe you. Normal people think you're a weirdo. They don't know what you're talking about. And I don't know where the middle ground is, but I think that we could afford to do some work on this. hopefully you guys are open to it. I'm very open to correction. Look, see what you think of all that. Anyway, looking forward to more of your work, and I'm going to start making more of my podcast now. So hope it doesn't. This makes some kind of sense.